Scottish Football Social Club is brought to you by McBookie.com. Take a lookie at McBookie today.
Good evening all. Welcome along to another edition of the Scottish Football Social Club. Nearly at the finish line, just 3 shows to go in this campaign now. But please get your questions in, because on a Monday, nobody likes anything more than seeing Michael squirm under the guise of a tough question from a fan. So get your questions in, especially if they're about the Jambos and Derek McInnes, who seemingly is headed east. Michael knows a lot. He's got an exclusive for us later on in the show. We'll get to the Jambos, Michael. Don't worry about that. But your brother-in-law, Al, he must be fuming.
He is fuming. But look, it is what it is. What can you do about it? I mean, McInnes, I think, has done a really good job at Kilmarnock, but the time is now. It might be now to move to pastures new. But look, he's done really well. So he's raging, but he needs to go at some point.
Michael, you save your exclusive for us, okay? I know it's a big line, isn't it, to come later? Just little tease.
You seem to be building something up here, Darryl. You'll need to let me in on the secret. But
it's amazing, Al, what he tells us off here, isn't it?
I know.
It seems like it's definitely maybe there from Al.
I'm just going to sit right in the fence and just give nothing away and just leave it for Michael. He's through there. He knows.
Maybe's aye, maybe's no.
You can't upset the family, Al, anyway, can you? Cannot upset the family.
Not.
Anyway, listen, we'll get to Hearts. We will get. I know it's the headline news tonight, but we've got all the highlights to get through. So, should we start on what was probably, Michael, the most significant game of the weekend, St Johnstone against Ross County? And I love the fact that every time that you two just like write off St Johnstone, they come back and there's just a little bit of air left in them, another breath, and that's a massive result for them at the weekend, Michael.
Well, I mean, of course it is, because had Ronan Hales equaliser, the second equaliser, had that gone in and not been disallowed for offside, effectively Ross County are safe from automatic relegation potentially. And you think to yourself, well, that's done and dusted. It's a tough one for St Johnstone, but credit to them, they've got it now back to 3 points, and they live to fight another day. And you've got to say that with 2 games left, that is the biggest achievement, to still be sitting here and saying, Ikpe's just stuck one over the crossbar, but it doesn't matter, because they've managed to win. They managed to win the game, and I don't think any of us realistically would have thought that was going to be the case. 2 games to go, and St Johnstone wouldn't have been mathematically relegated. So credit to them. This is obviously the goal that was talking about, Ronan Hales' second equaliser potentially offside, and the goal difference would have made it nigh on impossible for them to get caught, I think. And St Johnstone, it's quite incredible too. And you're absolutely spot on, Darryl. Every time you think that's it, they're done, no way, they're going down, automatic, they come up with a result that just breathes life into their campaign a little bit more.
Alan, how many lives do they have left?
Oh, loads, but look, because you're right. Every time we say, "Oh, that's it, it's done and dusted," they come back with something. So, but fair play. I mean, under Valkyrie, they've got a style. They know how they want to play, and they go out there and they give their all, and they deserved the result. The players were playing for the manager. You could see that they got the goals that they needed, even though they missed a couple. But I mean, the worrying thing for me is Ross County and the run that they're on. I think that's 7 in a row that they've lost. Their next game is huge. I mean, it's Dundee, isn't it? They play at
Dens.
I'm sure it is at Dens. So that is massive. I mean, the pressure going into that game is quite incredible. So, yep, it's all just bubbling away nicely.
This is the benefit of the split, Michael.
Darryl, yeah, I mean, it is. It's the beauty of the split, absolutely. But I was going to say, I mean, I don't know what you think, but do you remember when Wigan, every season down in England, used to be on the precipice, and Roberto Martinez used to seem like the calmest man alive, and you used to think, is this guy, does he live in a different world? Like, can he not see, like, they're doomed? And I get a certain sense from Simo Valakari of a similar sort of, mindset, that are we the ones that are mad and we don't understand it? And he knows the bigger picture. It's like, it's fine. He's a very, I would say he's a very different type of character. Yeah. He doesn't seem to be as flustered or affected by what you would think most normal humans are, and to a certain extent, I think it's a huge positive for St Johnstone that he exude that stress and that negativity. He seems like a very positive character, and sometimes that can seem a bit deluded, but then other times, like for example after the weekend, and you're looking at 2 games to go and they're creeping back into it, you think to yourself, well, maybe he knows something we don't.
Yeah. And Al's right, by the way, the fixtures to come, there's so many big games. Obviously for Ross County, it's away to Dundee, then they're home against Motherwell to finish the season. But on St Johnstone, Michael, what do you think of the last 2 fixtures? What hope do you give them now? Hearts next, and obviously a lot of talk going on around what's going to happen next for the Jambos, and then Dundee to finish the season.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give up.
Simo's watching. He wants you to give them no hope.
Yeah. Well, it's at that stage where they come up with a result, so you instinctively start to flip back to thinking, well, do you know what? They actually have got a chance. And they'll probably go to Tynecastle and lose 3-0. Yeah. That's the way it's been with them.
They'll end up in the playoffs.
But the flip is, Michael,
about Ross County.
Yes.
Ross County's run is a major concern because, you're talking about now 7 games, 7 defeats on the spin. Their confidence is going to be absolute rock bottom at the exact moment where you need to be able to find something. And the pressure's getting more and more. Yeah. I'm fearful for them. Even if they were to remain in the playoff spot, I'm fearful for them in regards to, whether they're going to have enough about them now to be able to, get themselves out of this trouble, out of this hole that they're in.
They certainly have absolutely no momentum. Here's a question in from Stephen Adamson. Dundee have a spectacular knack of giving teams an awful run of results. Runs a result. County hadn't won away from home in over a year before beating us 3-0. Aberdeen hadn't won in months until he sorted them out. Yeah, I take the point. Listen, it's going to be a really good watch the next couple of games. And this is, as I said, the benefit of the split.
Yeah.
Coming up against teams that are fighting for their lives against each other at this time of the season. It makes it a great watch for anyone who's obviously tuning in or watching the highlights or listening in the radio or listening to us talk.
Maybe watching live games. Maybe
watching live games. Maybe in the future. Maybe next season. Watch this space. Sometimes if you talk in this show, things happen. That's all I'm saying. Right, let's move forward. Al, Kilmarnock, look, we'll get back obviously to Derek McInnes shortly, but Kilmarnock have found form at the right time and they're over the line with a bit of style now.
That's what it is. It's all about being safe after the kind of start to the campaign. The manager spoke about how it wasn't good enough, but he felt that the team had enough. And look, they've waited to the very end to prove that. That's 3 wins in a row. I think 4 in the last 5. Yeah. Just take out the Celtic game, but I think they've actually come to form at the right moment in time, and we're seeing that on the pitch. But I think against Dundee, they're always decent games, aren't they? There's always goals. There's always something that happens within them, and they had enough on the day for me to get it over the line. So
they could even miss some big chances. The Bruce Anderson one, wasn't it, early in the game?
Oh yeah,
that
yeah. But look, it happens.
Al, has it ever happened to you?
Oh, it would have happened to me in numerous occasions, I'm probably sure, because I used to get a nosebleed when I got up that far. I was just looking to maybe pick somebody out. But Palmer Holding here, like, you see him look for him, and then he looks again, then he takes him clear out. He doesn't have to do it, but this is probably the big talking point, isn't it? I mean, for me personally, I don't think there's enough in it for a penalty anyway. But the problem being, as you see, he gets called over to the monitor to have a look. They've realised that it's not started in the box, but surely they could have looked at that before telling Don Robertson to go and check it. So it just turns into a farce. It looks just
and
silly.
I'm still not sure it didn't continue into the box. I know a lot of people have said, "Oh, it didn't." I don't know.
But Daryl, see, for me, it's a little shove. You see it in football all the time. You're just trying to get a little yard. I don't think there's enough in it for Simon Murray to go down. Yes, he does well. Look, that's a great strike. Yes, he does well to get there, and he's going to feel the contact. He's going to go down. But for me personally, I don't think it's enough, and it just makes the whole situation just a bit of a farce, really. Him standing over there next to the monitor, not seeing anything. So that's the big issue for me.
Yeah, Daryl. So just to be clear, even if it was carried on into the box, which it did, it doesn't matter.
It wasn't a pull.
It's only a pull. Only a pull is the one that could be, determined to be a penalty kick if it carries onto the box. But
you're absolutely right. If that's the determination, yes, of course.
But I'm with Al on this in regards to it doesn't look good. They've ended up at the right decision, and I'm 100% with Al. I don't think even if it started in the box, even if it had started in the box, it's not a penalty kick for me. It's a normal football like collision. The two players coming together, not enough in it for a penalty kick. But they've made an absolute pig's ear of it. And it just adds another layer to Dundee's frustration on the back of what happened last week. And here's the thing for me as well. When you think about, there's an incident later on in this show at Tynecastle with Motherwell, which we'll get onto. And the glaring inconsistency between the two instances are quite stark for me. But you can understand Tony Docherty's frustration in terms of what happened last week, and now there's this VAR incident. Even though it was the right decision, it doesn't look good. They've made an absolute mess of it, VAR.
No, not for the first time this season. Come to Dundee in just a second, Al. It's going to be interesting, isn't it, for the Kilmarnock fans now who are watching? I think new contracts have been signed tonight by a few players, or in the last 24 hours. Robbie Dees, who you saw scoring there, has just signed a contract extension. But they'll be worried if the manager's away, as it looks likely. Michael's got the big exclusive. If the manager's away, you know what he said. Well, you know what he said about players like Stuart Findlay and others, and Danny Armstrong, who's already been a link to Hearts anyway. They'll start wondering, some of the Killie fans, about the future direction of their players. Never mind the manager.
But I think that's always a worry when you look at your squad. Everything that's surrounding the manager. Is he staying? Is he going? We don't know yet. We'll maybe find out from Michael later on in the show. But when you look at the actual playing squad and you look at the players that are out of contract, yes, as you rightly said, a couple might be signing, but you've still got some big names within there that are big personalities for that group to take them forward. If you lose them, and if the manager goes as well, I mean, that's a big problem. I mean, how your recruitment's going to have to be spot on to try and replace these guys. It's a huge ask for them, especially if they've got aspirations of kicking on next season, being in the top six. They've seen what it was like to be in Europe. They want to experience that again, but there's a lot of uncertainty at this moment in time, which doesn't help.
Yeah, I wonder if Danny Armstrong will end up a Jambo after all, Michael, one way or another, and I wonder if anyone else might follow him. And Bobby Wales obviously is away. Alan, he's another place signed for Swansea, so they're going to have not a massive rebuilding job, but I guess if the manager goes and a few of those players don't re-sign, then it is quite a big summer for them. On Dundee, Michael, a couple of good strikes from Lyle Cameron, who's maybe finding a bit of form at the right time. I heard a few of the fans were grumbling about his performances since he'd signed the contract with Rangers. But either way, Dundee, just all along this season, we've always kept on saying they've got enough about them. They're going to be okay. They can score goals. They scored a couple of goals again at the weekend, and yet still find themselves in this difficult position with a real nervy few days ahead, and the fixtures to play Ross County next, and then to have to go to Perth on the final day of the season. My word, Michael.
Pressure. I mean, it really is palpable. And in the same vein as what I was saying before about St Johnstone, when you think you know what's happening, I think, with Dundee, I've thought for a long time, no, they're fine. In fact, they're good, but they're running out of games. And I take it back to the derby when they were outstanding, by the way.
And we had Tony Docherty on afterwards, and we're talking about the future. Never mind this.
Yeah. And they were outstanding. And The performance was great. Looked like they were having their squad fully fit and healthy, and you were thinking they're going to kick on. They put in a great performance after that against Rangers, obviously, but they end up losing the game. And it's been a wee bit like that in terms of, one step forward, 2 steps back. And whenever you're just thinking, right, they're going to hit a wee run of form and get themselves out of it, they lose another game. And those teams around them are just picking up points here and there. I mean, could you imagine if Ross County just picked up some points in this 7-game run of losing defeats? It's a worrying time for Dundee. The thing with Dundee is, if they were to end up in the playoffs, I'd have a far greater belief that they would be able to find their way out of it than Ross County at the moment. But you're talking about 2 games here that obviously it's a shootout. Obviously, they're playing the 2 teams that are below them. They've got Ross County at home on Wednesday night, and then they're away to St Johnstone on the last day of the season, which is, it's huge pressure. And so far, they've not handled that particularly well, Dundee. So it's
see the thing I would say though, Michael. The one thing I would say is that we know they can score goals. Yes, they concede. We've spoke about that a lot. They concede a lot of goals, but they can score. And that's the thing for me when you look at the fixtures coming up. They're more than capable of putting in really good performances and getting the goals they need. That's why I would maybe just edge, obviously, towards them. I still believe they've got enough, even though the games are huge, the pressure that surrounds them. If they can continue in that vein of scoring, then they should have enough.
We shall see this time next week. You think? We can't be sure. That's the problem, isn't it? Because the form at the moment.
There's a wee asterisk at the end there.
It's a big one. It is a big one. Right. Speaking of big ones, big stories, whatever you want to call it, the storylines, Michael. Hearts 3, Motherwell 0. A very different looking fixture when those teams last met a couple of weeks ago. Liam Fox deserves a lot of credit. I mean, I know it's a different scenario and different situation now, but the changes he's made and whatever he's saying to the players right now, he's getting results, Michael.
Yes. And he said after the game, he came out and he said, look, I've just tried to simplify things for the players, give them a bit of clarity in terms of what we're looking for. And, ultimately it's paid off, and it's paid off big time. And in large part, you've got to say it's paid off because two of the decisions that he's made, 2 of the big calls, Lawrence Shankland as a number 9, who would have thought? I mean, crazy thinking to do that. And he's brought Alan Forrest out of cold storage and put him out wide. And he's come up with 2 goals in the last 2 games against Ross County and then here as well. I mean, Lawrence Shankland's first goal, it's an absolute brilliant goal.
Yeah.
Now, this is the incident.
Even his movement.
This is the incident. Now, somebody needs to explain to me how, obviously, this is offside, but it's whether he has interfered with play. So it's a subjective call.
Well, has he gotten the eye line of the goal?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I personally think that goal should have stood, but I'm talking about the contradiction between having the referee going over to look at that, but last week at Dens Park, when it was all about a subjective call of whether Clark Robertson had interfered with play or not. Yeah. And VAR just made the decision. The referee was not sent over to look at it, which... But
this is what annoys all of us.
It should have been.
All of us, the inconsistency. But Michael, I actually think they've got that one right.
What one? The one at Tynecastle?
The one at Tynecastle, because if the ball goes the ball effectively goes underneath the Motherwell player. If you're not seeing
when you see the...
I agree, Al. I agree. But if you're not seeing that, might not even at least be a distraction to the goalkeeper. There's a possibility it could.
Darryl, that's fine in terms of, let's think about the bigger picture here, though. You think it's the right call. Alan and I think it's probably a little bit harsh. But the big thing here is it's subjective, and the ref's been asked to go and look at it.
Correct.
It didn't happen.
But the other one, the Dundee one,
it didn't happen.
That's the big problem.
VAR just decided because Clark Robertson, as they classed it, attempted to challenge for the ball. But we all know that it was subjective. It was so surely you've got to go and send the ref to look at it, to let him judge whether he felt that Clark Robertson had
Do you want me to get started in VAR again? Is this what
But,
you're trying tonight?
Mikey, but see the one where, see when Slattery hits the ball,
Yes.
there's an angle from behind,
Yeah.
right? And you can see that Fulton and goals is quite clearly can see exactly, and he dives the way he thinks it's going. Dan Casey's actually jumping up and out the way. I don't even think he's in his line of vision at that moment in time. So, like you're saying, subjective, right? Go and look at the monitor. Tell me what you think. We'll go with what you say. Where the other one, it wasn't that. That's where I'm with you. It has to be consistent. If you're going to make a subjective opinion, just send them to the monitor and let them decide as refs.
But you see what I'd say about this goal at Tynecastle? If you look at Fulton, the goalkeeper's reaction, he doesn't bat an eyelid.
I don't disagree, Michael. What I don't like though is because, you know, bearing in mind we've changed the rules or the laws down the years for reasons, and we've brought VAR in for other reasons, of course. But if you think about a player being in an offside position and the ball almost going underneath him, I agree. I don't think it made any difference to whether or not the goalkeeper Fulton would have reacted or saved this or not. But to me, he's close enough to be interfering to play or in the eye line of the goalkeeper enough to rule out just by the letter of the law I'm stating here. My opinion is not whether or not Fulton would save it. So I think that I can argue they've made the right call. He's too close to the ball to say he may not have had an effect in the game. So I agree it's a subjective call and it's the inconsistency that kills us. But by the letter of the law, I think they've probably got that one right. But because we've seen all these wrong calls and we're arguing about it, this is the problem. Who do you trust? Which referee do you trust? Which VAR do you trust now? The fans have zero trust left.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. And by the way, it's not a decision that I would be, you know, banging down the door of VAR HQ and saying this is a disgrace. I don't think it is the right call personally, but for all the reasons you've just pointed out there, it's a call that you can say, I understand why they made it. I completely understand why they made it. I just personally think, and I want to see as many goals as possible being allowed to stand, not chalking them off. When you look at the end result, I don't think, rather than hypotheticals, look at what actually happened. And I don't think, as you can see from Fulton's reaction, that it affected it at all. But I totally understand.
But even, honestly,
it's a tissue. It's a tissue, by the way. But on social media, I'm just clarifying. That's just a tissue, okay? In case you've been on social media today, okay? When three men meet in a room, just to say.
Mikey, honestly, I wish we had I wish we had the view from straight behind, because you can see Fulton's got a proper view of striking the ball. I don't feel that Casey's in the way. Yes, his motion when he jumps takes some past there, but I think the action's already happened. So it is subjective, and I just feel what those situations, if they decided, right, we'll do it the same way all the time, if we feel that's happening, send them to the monitor and let the ref in the middle make the decision. And then you get the consistency. Agreed.
Okay, bigger picture. Hearts, you said to us, Michael, what was it, 2 weeks ago now, or last week, you thought Derek McInnes, definitely endorsing him for the job. It sounds like tonight there's a lot of movement after hearing Derek McInnes say the clubs hadn't officially had contact with each other or hadn't discussed the deal. Obviously tonight that's now happened. And you'd imagine if that's happened and in between, you would have thought that Derek McInnes' agent would have spoken to the club, and you would imagine most of the personal terms would already be agreed. It's down to the clubs now. So, Michael, it's a matter of time, isn't it? And I'm sure that's the information that you've received.
I've not received any information.
Oh, he's a different man in your life.
Okay. Yeah, because you imagine it happened the last game of the season. Whoa, can you imagine that?
I know.
Let's assume, Michael, all information is correct. Do you like this? And what does it tell us about who is currently making the decision at board level at Tynecastle?
Well, these are the bigger questions, because, I mean, look, in terms of knowing definitively whether Derek's going to take the Hearts job or not, we don't know. But what we do know is everything you've just described. The clubs have now made contact. Hearts clearly want Derek as the manager, which finally seems like they're making a sensible decision. But there are bigger issues that remain that still have a little bit of doubt in my mind as to whether this is a 100% guaranteed going to happen. And they would be, from Derek's perspective, who is the decision makers at the club? Who are the people that are going to be making the calls, the big calls on the recruitment? How does it work? Tony Bloom is in the wings here, talking about putting 10 million in for 29% of the club. And you look back to the things that have been said by the current board themselves, and it shows you how influential Jamestown Analytics have been up until this point over the last year or so. And I started thinking to myself, how can you effectively have a third-party company, which is Jamestown Analytics? They have no affiliation with Hearts other than it's effectively a recruitment company that Hearts use. How can they wield so much power in terms of to say, no, this is happening or that's not happening? And then
that was
just
a carrot, mate, to get Tony Bloom to make sure the investment went in. That was one of the deal.
Right. But if Tony Bloom's coming in and he's going to have 29% of the company, the club, the same thing, then who's going to be actually making the calls? Is it the board or is this just a zombie board? And
Tony Bloom will be making the calls.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Is Tony Bloom the one that's appointing Derek, or is it the Hearts board? And that would be a concern for Derek, because if you're being appointed by the board and then somebody else is about to come in and be the kingmaker, then you'd be wanting to make sure that everything is clear and there's no ambiguity about things, because then that gives a certain degree of uncertainty in your own position.
Yeah, I fully agree.
You see the 10 million?
Yes. Go on.
Sorry, I'll see the 10 million, Mikey. Is that like a lot of that will be investment into the playing squad? Because he spoke about how he wants to ruffle some feathers in terms of the league, which makes me think that he wants to challenge or whatever in the upcoming season. So is that going to be a fair whack investment into the team then? Because you've spoken, we've all spoke about it. We've all spoke this season about what they need and what they maybe don't have. So do you think that's what that money's for?
No, I think from what I understand is a fair chunk of that is going to be ring fenced for a new training facility. Right. How much of that is then put into increasing, the budget or just facilitating what's there? Because at Hearts, what you need to recognise is that over the last few years, there's been a good chunk of European money that's not going to be there next season. There's been a good chunk of money that's come from James Anderson, the hedge fund philanthropist, and whether that is going to be continuing in the future, it's up for debate. So there's a fair amount of money that has flowed into Hearts over the last number of years that there's a little bit of uncertainty about. So that 10 million, once you take a chunk of it away for a training facility, there's not a great deal that is going to be transformational.
No, but Michael, just going by, and I know Hearts have made it quite clear if the Tony Bloom deal goes through and the foundation of Hearts approve it, as we all expect that it will go through. They made it very clear they're not going to be a feeder club, so it's not going to be the same model that we've seen with Union Saint-Gilloise and Brighton, etc. However, it's very clear that they'll have full access to the same recruitment model through Jamestown Analytics. Yep. There will be a link up. We've already seen it with players like Kabangu coming in. So right away, regardless of the spend on players, the budget will increase in the playing squad. New players are going to arrive anyway because this analytics model is going to continue to identify players. So you'd imagine, regardless, Michael, there's a lot of change, a lot of movement. There's going to be a lot of turnover anyway. And can I just take that full circle and go back to Derek McInnes here? We've had Neil Critchley on this show this season, only a number of weeks ago. He made it very, very clear to us on this show how recruitment works at Hearts. And I know Derek McInnes will have to make sure that he's happy that everything continues in the way that he wants to move forward with the club if he is going to be the manager. But Neil Critchley made it very clear in this show that targets are presented to him. He gets a say, but he doesn't really get to present the targets. Primarily, they come from the analytics. So that's surely the way this is going to work moving forwards. Why would they change at this point, Michael, when the Tony Bloom money's about to arrive?
Well, I don't think they would change.
So do you like that model then for someone like Derek McInnes, who probably hasn't worked within that before?
I mean, it's that sort of model that you've explained there is not alien to most places nowadays. And I wouldn't say that Derek's been, is not what, he'll have worked with.
He's not worked with an analytics company like that, and he's never been the guy that's not said yes or no, the final decision maker.
Aye, I get that. And ultimately, the manager has to be the one that's the decision maker, because otherwise, who is some faceless individual, in the shadows, and who do you trust as an organisation, as a club, as a fan base? Look, ultimately here, for me, the big question is, of course you want to use the technology that is available. Of course you do. But it comes down to, as I've said on a number of occasions, and my understanding and what I've read and what I hear is that the Jamestown Analytics is not a generic thing across the board with Como, Union Saint-Gilloise, with Brighton and all that. It is all to do with the clubs putting in what they want and then adjusting it for whatever they're needing. And this is where the concern, I think, for a lot of Hearts people is that historically, the people at the club haven't known what they're really doing. So even in January there, you end up with some recruitment that there's some questionable elements there. So I'd feel far greater security with somebody like Derek McInnes if he was actually feeding that into using the technology properly. Mm-hmm. But
that'd be a change from what Neil Critchley told us. That would be a change.
It's got to be. Well, how would that be a change?
Well, because Neil Critchley made it quite very obvious in this show that he wasn't inputting any data. He would say, okay, we're looking for a left back or a right back, whatever it would be, and the data would
here's your options.
The options. Yeah. And then in the end, he would put forward the one he wanted, but didn't necessarily, although he suggested, get the final say. It sounds like he would say, this is the one I would like. Can you get the deal done?
Darryl, what I'm saying is very similar to what you're talking about there.
But just a variation of them.
What the difference here is, I'm talking about putting the information in. The information is, I need this type of player. They've got to have these types of attributes. That's what Neil Critchley would have been telling us. And that's what any normal coach, manager, person whose head is on the block would be doing. And also, if they know a player, they're going to be saying, look, this player here, he is perfect for what we're looking for. You can feed it through the system as much as you want. There has to be a level of flexibility in there. Now, whether that is available...
That's it, Michael.
Huh?
That's what I'm saying. See exactly what you said, flexibility. And I think it goes in your personality. Neil Critchley to Derek McInnes, I think, are very different. So use the technology to your advantage.
Yep.
I reckon they'll probably look at people and say, well, I fancy this guy as well, so let's use it and let's see what it comes up with. But I also like these people. And I think he's got the personality to say, no, I want that guy. So you can be flexible and use the analytics as well. But you need to use your own knowledge of the game and what you're looking for within your team to develop it. Right, he's got the personality to deal with it.
But the big thing is, Darryl, is that flexibility going to be within the club? Because, I heard, and it would be a serious concern if I was, in Derek's position, I heard that potentially the way that the system's actually run is that the manager in the end doesn't get the final say. That the manager puts forward what they're looking for, the data goes out and finds the player and basically signs the player. And I just think that is madness on stilts. And I don't see how any real manager, worth their weight in gold and believing in themselves and had self-respect could, accept their heads on the line.
Exactly. Your neck's on the block. Aye.
All right.
You live and die by your own decisions, I think, especially when you become a manager. And if you've got the personality of Derek McInnes, I think, and everything that he's come with, his experience and everything, he'll want to make those decisions. Because if I'm the manager and Mikey, you're in charge and you say, no, you're just having him, I'm like, well, that doesn't work for me. That's not really who I want. And then you go on a bad run and it's the manager's fault. Get him out, get somebody else in.
I think you're right.
Work like that.
Al, you're right. But I think there's also a degree of, if Derek McInnes does indeed take this job, you are buying into the model as the manager.
Yeah, I get that. But I think it's good that you can have it to use to your advantage. Yeah. But you still have to use everything.
Yeah.
I think that your experience, your own recruitment, what you have done in the past, what's worked for you before, you can use that as well as the analytics to hopefully get the best outcome.
Fully agree. It says name on the block in the end. Fully agree, Al.
It's going to be a fascinating period of time here because I think there's an element of Derek's reputation that if he takes the job, I think there is a perception that things will be, steadied, and it will be very much he is a leader. He's the one that is going to be doing the things that he wants to do in conjunction with all the data and analytics that are there, which for me is actually the hybrid that you'd be looking for.
Yeah.
If that transpires, then I'd be positive for Hearts with Tony Bloom in the background, wanting to actually make an impact in Scotland. Because, by the way, if you look at what happened at the start of the season with Aberdeen and how exciting it was for our game, this is the sort of thing that could be transformational, and it could genuinely bring that much needed end to the duopoly that is Scottish football with the two clubs for Glasgow. But don't do it right, and you end up, blowing a wonderful opportunity here, which is there. If you get an experienced quality manager like Derek in the building, you give the investment with the technology and the know-how that clearly Star Lizard, Jamestown Analytics and Tony Bloom have. If you can get that to marry together, Hearts could potentially be in a very good position. But if you don't, it blows up in your face.
I've spoken to Davy Weir in the past, as you know, Michael, a few times. He's a good guy, used to work with him quite a lot, and he's spoken a lot about the Brighton model and Tony Bloom and everything else. Tony Bloom is not coming into a football club if he doesn't mean business. If he doesn't expect change. Look what he's done everywhere else. So it's going to be very interesting times. He'll have great intent to come into the football club. Just final one then, Michael, on Hearts before we move forwards here. Lawrence Shankland. Derek McInnes is the manager. If he is, does it make it more or less likely that Lawrence Shankland stays on at the football club? And would you want him to stay on?
Seriously, why would you not want somebody that's capable? Because, by the way, look, it's not rocket science. Get guys out in areas that can service him and he'll score goals. Honestly, these last two games take the frustration levels through the roof. When you look at the nonsense that has gone on before, I feel for Lawrence himself.
He also missed a lot of chances, Michael. I agree with you. He also missed a lot of chances and looked off.
He's not been playing in that position to miss them.
I know, but even when he had good chances early in the season, penalties.
I know, but that can happen to any player that you can go through a run of form.
The reason I asked you the question, Michael, was because just looking in social media, it sounds like some of the Hearts fans had moved on from Lawrence Shankland, which has surprised me because I'm with you, but I'm just saying that is the reflection from some of those fans.
Yeah, but I think most Hearts fans have moved on from him because if you were to ask them, I think less than 5% would think that he might stay. And I think that's probably accurate. And that's a frustration because I do think Hearts being in the right place where they should be in terms of stable in the background, challenging for Europe, getting into Europe, putting a good offer on the table, I think there would have been an outside chance that he would have stayed and would have signed. So to go back to the question that you asked,
more or less likely.
Derek McInnes as manager, better, unquestionably, it would raise the percentage chance of him signing. But would it raise it to a level where I think it might happen? I'm not sure. But it certainly improves the chances.
Al, you're taking that?
Well, honestly, you think of the goals that you're going to have to replace. I know he's had a slow start to the season, but Michael's right. I thought it was ludicrous playing him where he was at, right, in that number 10 role. Get him up front. He's shown in the last two games, 4 goals and an assist in the last 2 games, playing in his natural position. And look, Michael knows more about this team than I do, but I can see it as well in my eyes that they struggled out wide at times. If you've got guys in the squad and it's well balanced, as Michael put it before, that are delivering good balls into areas, you've seen his movement, you've seen from the header, you've seen his first goal as well, what he's capable of. The big thing for me is, how do you replace him? The goals that he scored over the seasons he's been there, how do you go out and... But that's a big risk when you've already got somebody there that you could put a deal on the table. If it is Derek that comes in, I'm sure he would want him to stay. that can score the goals for you. But that's about how do you replace it?
Do you know what?
Oh, the analytics they'll have a say.
Supercomputer.
Do you know, like, you just look at, for example, Liverpool with Salah, right? They are in a position where Salah, how do you replace that? You don't. You can't. So what do? They go out their way to make sure this guy is staying. We're not letting him go. To go and replace him, and I know it's a different level and the finances are different, but the point remains, for them to go and replace
Salah also had a wonderful season. Jack Christie, by the way, his point there was not lost on us, hence why I was asking the question.
It wasn't the finished article then, was he? Shankland.
No.
But he had to go out and experience different things to get to the situation he's at. The penny drops at different times for different people. That's the answer to that, I would say.
Totally.
Yes.
So to go back to what you're saying about Salah, right? Yes, Salah had a great season, absolutely. But he's also a few years older than Lawrence Shankland. So, and it's astronomical sums of money. Liverpool, granted, could go out and then spend it on someone else. But the point remains for Hearts. Lawrence Shankland's 29. Where are you going to go and get somebody that's of that stature? And are you going to be able to afford to get that? Or you just increase your budget in terms of what you would be spending to attract Lawrence Shankland to stay. Now, for me, I'd be doing the latter. Put something on the table that is beyond what you would normally be spending, but then you could potentially sign a new 2-year contract for Lawrence Shankland with bonuses in there as well. Make it attractive enough to actually plant the seed of doubt in his mind about, I'm away, to then start thinking, do you know what? Derek McInnes coming in, Tony Bloom's coming in here. He's talking about, changing things up. They're giving me a contract that actually is, a meaty deal here.
So make a proper footballing decision. Is that what you mean?
Give him a question. Make him think about it, because I don't think that's happened up until this point.
Okay, right. Let's put the Jambos to one side. Fans of the other clubs, they'll be wondering, albeit clearly it's the headline story tonight, so we had to do lots on that.
See you later.
Right. He's had enough, right? By the way, did you know?
Is that Rangers shorts he was wearing? Is that a pair of Rangers shorts he's got in there?
For a second, I was wondering if they were actually shorts. And did you notice that Michael was just tapping away earlier on? He was just updating the pages of the news pages, looking at his text, just waiting for confirmation that the deal's gone through. Anyway, brilliant. Let's move forward. Celtic Hibs, obviously a lot of eyes on Hibs and the race for Europe at the weekend as well. How they do at Celtic Park this time round. Celtic really professional in the way they approach the game, Alan, and coming from a goal down as well. Obviously, that cup final ahead means that their focus is pretty sharp at this point in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've got Brendan Rodgers will have set that squad their own targets. With the amount of goals that they've scored, they'll want to break it. They've got a treble on the horizon, cup final. Everybody wants to be playing at a level where they're competing to be in that starting lineup. So that's just a given. That's what he wants from his squad, to play at this high level. And that's what they've done all season. They've churned out performance after performance. But Hibs going into this game, you're thinking that the situation that they're in, the momentum that they've got, you thought possibly they could get something. And I just think if Hibs were clinical, because you're only going to get a number of opportunities, I think, against Celtic, especially at Celtic Park, with them taking the lead, I thought they would maybe grow in confidence. I think here, Trusty can't quite sort his feet out to get rid of it. But another good finish from a player whose contract we're not really sure about what's happening. But just situations like that, they swarm you. I mean, Bashiri's too involved with Ida, and then Kuhn gets round the back and he scores a good goal. But I always feel Celtic don't panic. They went down 1-0 at home. It's not like panic stations. They just continue to play their own game. They've got really good movement in forward areas, as you see there. Ida scoring off the back of a really good run. And yeah, there's a mistake here that leads to a goal. But I just feel they've got levels that other teams don't. When they need to, they can just go through the gears and just punish teams. And that's what they've done. But look, all the teams round about Hibs get beat as well. So still, for me, they're in the situation where they're leading the race for that third spot. I believe they will get it. Well, a lot of hard work still to go in the last two games, but they're in a real good situation.
Oh, they're in the box seat, absolutely. We were talking about Martin Boyle, if you remember last week, Michael, and there've been a few newspaper columns written about the fact that the clubs have now spoken, or the representatives from Martin Boyle and the football club have now spoken.
You're still thinking about Hearts, aren't you?
I'm still thinking about Hearts. But the representatives had spoken. But then listening to what Martin Boyle said after the game, it doesn't sound like there's any deal in place yet. And given the fact that there's an option there, I'm just a bit surprised that it's not done.
Yeah, I'm surprised too. Yeah, because he basically said balls in Hibs court, that he's, I don't know if it was directly quoted, but certainly it seems to be that there are options out in the A-League in Australia, which you would imagine, not surprised to hear about that. But yeah, I was a bit like yourself, surprised as to the fact that he, seemed to be in the dark about it, and that nothing seems to have progressed, and that, like we were led to believe, and a couple of weeks ago, that Hibs have this option.
Yeah,
you would have thought.
Well, they've got the option, and I think David Gray was even quoted by saying, he's a player he really likes. So,
what I was going to say was,
why the hold up?
Led to believe with the option. Yeah. Well, you would think exactly that. Logically, something would have happened by now with regards to that, whether they were going to do it or not, because nothing's going to happen in the last 2 games of the season that's going to alter your opinion in terms of whether you see him capable of being part of the team next season or not. So I just wonder whether there's something else in the background or what. But even if there was something in the background, for example, like Hibs were wanting to keep him on, and maybe even say, look, we want to do a 2-year deal, but we want it to be on less money than at the moment. Because I'd imagine this 1-year extension would be on the same terms. You would think that's what the extension would be there for. I don't know, but even if that was the case, you would have thought there would have been dialogue with the agent on that. So
you'd have thought so. Good to see Triantis, by the way, up for Player of the Year, the Scottish Football Writers Association, because he's been outstanding for Hibs, certainly as the seasons move forward. And even when they were losing, actually, he was one of the guys you still thought was playing well week in, week out. Onwards, St Mirren, Al. I mean, wow, the way they are finishing the season. I've mentioned Stephen Robinson. I'm surprised he's not linked with other jobs like other Scottish managers are at the moment, or maybe in the running for Player of the Year. If these things were voted for... Sorry, Scottish clubs. Did I say Scottish managers? Scottish clubs.
I knew what you meant.
Managing in Scotland. Okay, Michael, let's be precise. But anyway, the job he has done with St Mirren and the way they are finishing this season, and the fact that they could finish in a European place again is staggering, isn't it? Given all that he's had to contend with this season.
So this is what the 3rd year in a row, top 6, and they're still there with 2 games to go, fighting for Europe. I think is it 2 points now? They're off Dundee United, and you just feel, even from the split, their form's been excellent. They've been on a real good run. Dundee United, not so much since the split. They've really struggled. But what he gets out those players on a weekly basis is incredible. And they'll give 110%. And I've always said that this was actually a really good move that leads to this, the ball down the line. You can tell that they work on things like this. Good little movement, good shift and goal. And I just think they give you so much week to week. 110%, and Stephen Robinson, that's what his sides are going to give you, and they actually get stronger. I felt like as this game got on, they got stronger. They were creating more, they were running forward, they were being aggressive. Dundee United to me just look like they're tired, they're ready kind of for the end, like they've kind of ran out of steam. They've still had a good season, but I do feel if they were to end up in 6th, it's not where they should have finished, if that makes sense. Maybe if they had a little bit more depth within the squad, they could have maybe pushed on. It just feels to me at this moment in time, they've just slightly ran out of steam. And St Mirren, they know what it takes. And I think you could tell that in the game.
And Jim Goodwin basically said that he felt his team just looked a bit leggy and tired as the game went on at the weekend again, Michael. Dundee United finished with a trip to Ibrox, then a game against Aberdeen. They've just got to hope there's something big that's still riding on that last match. I'm sure there will be regardless for them. They can still finish the season in fantastic fashion. It could be a shootout, actually, between the two of them in some ways. What about St Mirren then? Because they've still got to play Hibs. They've got to go to Celtic. Who knows? Last day of the season. I mean, do you give them hope, Michael, of reeling any of the teams in above?
Yeah, I mean, you can't ignore it. They've got the momentum behind them. and 7 points out the game's post split. Dundee United 3 defeats on the spin. That and everything that Alan said. Having watched that and seen that game at Tannadice coming in, 100% just looked like it's the end of the season can't come quick enough type thing. And not to, I'm not criticising Dundee United or Jim Goodwin in any way here, but I wonder whether, obviously there was a number of the players quite early on, a few weeks ago, decisions were made and it was, sort of publicly announced that they'd be moving on. And since then, Declan Gallagher is one of those guys that's looked quite, leggy. He's looked like he's run out of steam. And obviously he's one of the guys that he's been told that his contract's not going to be renewed. I just wonder in hindsight whether that's something that they would do again.
Yeah, it's one of those, it's a noble move, isn't it, of the football club to let players go early. It is a noble move, but is it the right move?
No, you have to do it at the end.
I know.
See, any team that I've been at, even when I was coming to the end of my career, it was like the managers would have meetings with the players. Like, so say you played on the Saturday, the Sunday, the Monday, the team would come in. I'm talking about the ones that were maybe out of contract or whatever, if there was no, as you say, dialogue or whatever, and they would say, look, this is what we're thinking. You maybe need to look elsewhere or whatever it may be. I just feel if you say it weeks before, and like certain players, like your head could go. Like, because you maybe think, oh, well, I'll sign a new deal here. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, actually, no. And you have to deal with that. I know you have to be professional, don't get me wrong, but not everybody takes it that way, unfortunately. And it can be difficult.
Agreed. So, listen, Al, Dundee United obviously looked a bit off the pace. Aberdeen did as well. We'll come to Rangers in a minute. We'll obviously look at the goals in just a second. But just first of all, the Dons, I don't know. I mean, they just lacked dynamism in the game, Alan, which was similar to the performance the week before. They had loads of attacking players on the pitch. I don't know, a couple of chances. Well, why is it not quite happening at the moment for the Dons, given there's still so much to play for as well for them?
No, definitely. I mean, they've got the final to look forward to. I mean, still going for that third spot. I don't know, they're just missing something. I just feel when we were watching them earlier on in the season, they were so dynamic. They had pace. They were aggressive in everything they'd done. They tried to set traps to go and win the ball back. They played with real freedom at times as well, under, I thought, Jimmy Tulline.
Yeah.
But they're going to Ibrox and they know the situation that Rangers are in. They hadn't won a home game in 7 games. So why not kind of go and put your foot down and try and do something about it instead of maybe just containing them? They tried a little bit in the second half, but with Rangers kind of changing the formation, Cherny going into more of that number 10, it caused real problems. They couldn't deal with it. And it is a worry because I'm maybe Michael will have another opinion, but I feel when I'm watching them, I don't quite know what's missing. I don't know if it's tired within them or they come down for the great start of the campaign that they had. But look, this is the first half. Dessers, I think, had maybe 1 or 2 real good opportunities that he squandered. But Barry said about making the change at half time. Bayrami comes off, who I think can flatter to deceive at times. Cherny goes more into the middle. And there's a new dynamic about them. They're hungry to run forward. Raskin, I thought, was excellent at moving forward. They moved the ball quickly. And they ended up opening them up. And I think after the first or second goal goes in, you can kind of just feel, even though they had 1 or 2 opportunities, they hit the post at the start of the second half, it just looked like they were never going to get back into it. That's a great touch and finish. And Rangers just kind of went from strength to strength towards the end. And I don't know, Aberdeen, they're just missing something at this moment in time. The big thing for me was the semi-final as well.
Yeah.
When they were playing, and you just never felt that they were going to score or break them down. They had no really other ideas of trying to create something, and they just looked that way at this moment in time.
Yeah, 4 changes were made. Some players you've been calling for back in the team, like Nicky Devlin, Michael, but still question marks. They've got to find something, a little spark, don't they? Because that cup final is a tough fixture. They need to go into that with a degree of confidence.
Of course they do. And if it comes to a sort of stutter and halt the league campaign, then it's certainly going to help things for the cup final. But
they play Celtic next, don't they?
Oh, sorry?
They play Celtic next, Aberdeen.
Yes, at home they've got Celtic on Wednesday. But the biggest sort of takeaway I had watching that game, of course, we've seen the issue in terms of just lacking any real sort of guile and cutting edge, which is it's a bit of a bizarre one because other times it looks like they're full of it, or certainly they were early in the campaign. But Knustor, I thought, had a really poor game at centre half.
Could have went off.
Like really poor game, and that was it was unsettling because I don't think they ever looked stable defensively. Tobers was back in, who previously I've quite liked what I've seen, but it's his first game back, and I wasn't really sure what his first game. You can understand not being fully up to speed, but yeah, I thought Knustor at centre half. I was just you see the fourth goal there where when he mishits it straight to Igaman. Just lack of composure. Everything just seemed a little bit like it was rushed and desperate, caught out position, and that would be a concern for me because defensively you've got to be absolutely solid and on point going into that cup final.
That was a good question. That was a good question about
Jack Christie did it. Another point there. It's obviously it's impossible for us to know, Al, if something's happened in the dressing room. The only thing I can think throughout this campaign is that Jimmy lost one of his assistants, Al, at a pretty key, important time of the season, and then not long after that they lost some form. So I don't know if it's something
that could possibly be an issue, but I just feel like when we were watching them at the start of the season, you could see what they were doing. Like I said, they were trying to set traps. They were being aggressive. They were winning the ball high up. They were moving the ball quickly from side to side. They had penetration with runs. They were cutting it back. They were scoring goals. They looked full of energy. They looked like they had a plan, what they were trying to do. And I don't know if it was the run that they went on where they had that massive dip in form that confidence has just left them and they don't quite know how to get it back. But recent weeks, they look like they've ran out of ideas when they're going forward. Times, they end up in like a line, like a block line, and they're all just kind of looking for somebody to give you that spark, and it's not quite there.
Yeah, like a Kevin Nisbet wonder goal, absolutely, which obviously helped a few weeks ago for sure. Final minute or so, just on Rangers, Barry Ferguson finally got the win in front of the home fans. Al, it's been a long time, too long coming from his point of view. I just ask you about some of the decision making right now. I mean, I look at the Celtic game. I think it was Sean McArdle came on after the game was pretty much wrapped up for Celtic. Tom Lawrence coming off the bench for Rangers at 3-0 up at this time of the season, a guy who's going to be leaving the football club. Why not get a few more youngsters in? I think I've made the point to you last week. Why not even play guys like Cortez, who they're about to shell out a lot of money for, to see what he's got?
I think it's a good point. I think it's an excellent point, actually, especially when you're at home. It's a good opportunity for you to blood the young guys through into the first team. You're winning the game comfortably, so give them an opportunity to go and show the manager or whoever's coming in what they're capable of. I mean, only Barry will know that. Only he'll know, unless he thinks some are not good enough.
No, and he obviously wants to win now. But this is the bigger picture now, isn't it?
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
But what is the bigger picture for Barry?
You never get a chance to develop young players. For Barry, of course, you can't imagine Barry Ferguson's going to land this job now. You can even hear the resignation in his own voice now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
so this is surely about the football club that he loves.
Yeah, of course. And I think you always want to see a pathway for the youth coming through. We've seen it with Bailey Rice. Do you want to see more? Absolutely. Was that a good opportunity to bring someone? Of course it was. And like you're saying, Cortez, I mean, it's just not worked for me, whether you bring him on or not. But when you look at Lawrence, on his day, you know what he's more than capable of. Looks like that'll be him finished. So do you really need to have a look to see what he's going to do? Not really. I think there was an opportunity for you to see more youth. So hopefully we can.
And your final view, Al, your final view on the 45 minutes of Bayrami?
Can I say it?
No, you don't. Anyone who watches every week, I think they know, don't they?
I just feel that is he a talented player? Yes. Does games pass him by? Absolutely. I don't think he does enough. I want to see him be more aggressive, work harder. He's talented. He's technical. He's more than capable of shifting the ball, moving, trying to make something happen. I just think games pass him by a little bit too easy, and I want more. That's my biggest gripe.
We don't want any more, because we've nearly hit the hour mark. Michael, you had your say in the Jambos and some, and that big exclusive he gave us before we went live, Al. Very
Oh, I
quiet.
know.
Very quiet.
Right.
Once the camera starts rolling, YouTube and X, if that's what you call it, I don't know. Anyway, right, out of time. Michael, thank you very much. We'll talk to you more about Derek McInnes, the Hearts manager, next week. Alan, thanks as always as well. We're back in the Social Club next Monday night. Bye for now.
The Scottish Football Social Club is brought to you by McBookie.com. Take a lookie at McBookie today.